Hey everybody, in this video I am going to show you how to automate a large repetitive task using Google Apps Script. And this is taken directly from my day job. So this was a task that I was given this week, and that was we needed to make time cards for a large number of employees. So normally, that would mean sitting down and just filling out the time cards for all of the employees, making sure that they were all formatted properly individually. But we're not going to do that because we know AppScript. So I'm going to show you how I solved that problem using automation. And the first thing that I did was I built the actual time card template that I'm going to be making copies of for each employee. And so the way it basically works is it has the employee ID, name, department, location, supervisor, the week of for the first table, as well as the check date when they should expect to get paid. And I did that for each time card because every pay period has 2 weeks. There are 2 tables. There's one for, in this case, the week of April 25th to May 1st. And then down here, it's May 2nd to May 8th. And the pay period or the check date is going to be on May 12th. And so an employee would come in here on Monday, and let's say they clocked in right at 8 a.m. And I put in data validation for all of the fields here to make sure that we always get the right number. So let's say they come in at 8, they go to lunch at 12:30, they come back promptly at 1:30, and let's say they work until 5:30 p.m. All right, so they worked 8.5 hours today, and let's say that that is pretty much their schedule all week. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So here we're seeing that in this column under the regular hours, or rather, let's start here. This gives a subtotal of how many hours and minutes they worked each day. This next column over keeps a running tally. So 8.5 hours for Monday, then it goes to 17 hours total for Tuesday, then 25.5, then 34 for Thursday. And then by Friday, they're going into overtime. So it caps the regular hours at 40. And anything above that, it starts calculating in the next column as overtime hours. And then down here, it gives the total for the week, 40 regular hours, 2.5 hours for overtime. So works pretty decently. Definitely solves the problem. But now we have to go ahead and make time cards, 2 time cards for an entire list of employees. So the way that we're going to do this is a couple of things. We're going to use this spreadsheet that I've called Time Card Builder, and it has a place to put the employee's name, the ID, their employee ID, their location, supervisor, pay period, whatever information needs to go into that time card. And in this case, what we are going to do is, let me grab some employees and some employee IDs. And just to kind of keep this video somewhat succinct or short, I'm just going to do a small number of employees, and I'm just going to do the name and their employee IDs. So the next thing that we need to do is we need a place where we're going to store the cards. So in my Google Drive, I just simply created a folder called Time Cards. And then we're going to need the code, which is going to grab this template that I've built, make a copy of it, give that the file name of that copy, name it with a specific convention. In this case, we want it to be employee name -ID -pay period of, and then we need to store it into this folder. So we're going to write the code that's going to do that right now. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to create a new function called Time Card Builder, and we're not passing any arguments to it. And I'm just going to start off with just a couple of variables just to help me manage grabbing and working with multiple sheets. So I'm going to say for this one, let ss equal spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. So that grabs this spreadsheet, the one that I'm working on, and my code is running behind this spreadsheet here called Time Card Builder. So then I need to grab the actual tab. So I'm going to just say let sheet equal ss, because that's the spreadsheet now. Get sheet by name. That was convenient. That was the first one there. And the name of the tab that I'm working with is called employee information. So we're going to say employee information. All right. And then the last thing that I always like to get is let last row equal sheet get last row. And when I want this, when I run this code, and let's say I'm going to have to run it multiple times throughout the year, or at least like once or twice a month, every time I run it, I want to know what the last row is. So I'm going to do a console.log, and I'm going to say last row is, and I'm going to give it that last row value. All right, so we've done that. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a loop that is going to essentially go down each row, grab the values that it needs, and start putting them into the time cards. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to do a for loop. And if you're not familiar with a for loop, I will give you the basic introduction to how it works. So we're going to say for, then we're going to open up a parenthesis, and this takes 3 values. The first one is our starting iterator. So I'm going to say let I equal 0. I is going to be our iterator, and I'll show you how that works in just a moment. Semicolon. Now we need to give it a threshold. So as long as I is less than or equal to, last row, keep running, and then every time you run, add 1 to I. That I++, that is shorthand for add 1 to whatever I is currently. So kind of show you an example here, or walk through this one more time. So we're starting off with I equals 0. And so if 0 is less than or equal to the value of last row, it's going to run. But when it does run, it's going to add 1 to I, which means the next time this runs, this is instead of 0, I is going to equal 1. So then it runs again, adds another 1 to I, so then it's 2, and then I goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And basically, as long as it is less than or equal to the last row in our sheet, it will continue to run. Once it no longer matches this, the loop is going to stop. And this is really convenient, specifically when working with spreadsheets, or in this case, Google Sheets. And I'll show you why in these next 2 lines. So the first thing we have to do inside of our loop is we have to grab the employee name and the employee ID. So we're going to say let employee name equal, and we are going to say sheet.getRange. And I'm going to use, as you may or may not know, there's a number of ways that you can define ranges in Google Sheets. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the toInteger method. So essentially, I'm going to give it a row coordinate and a column coordinate. So in this case, I want Dwight Schrute, which is going to be row 2, column 1. So I'm going to go in here and say row 2, column 1, just like that. And I'm going to say, give me the value. Whatever value is in that cell, store it in employee name. Now, here's where that iterator really comes into play, because the next time this runs, I want it to go 1 row down. Well, because I is going to continually increase in value, I can just say 2 plus I. So when it runs the first time, it's 2 plus 0, which is 2. So Dwight Schrute. It runs again, 2 plus 3, 3. It goes to the 3rd row, which is now Jim Halpert. And so this is a really nice, convenient way of just looping through spreadsheets using this iterator method. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the employee ID, and we're going to use pretty much the same method. So sheet.getRange. In this case, we are still starting on that 2nd row, so 2 plus I, but we're going to be in the 2nd column. And then we want to get the value there. So now we have the employee name and the employee ID. And just so I have visibility into where the loop is at any given time, I'm going to have it give me some information back in the console. And I want the value of I. I'm going to say plus colon space. And I want the employee name plus kind of a visual separator there, just a pipe, plus employee ID. So when it runs, it will, for every loop, it'll say what the value of I is, and then what the corresponding employee name and employee ID. We can actually test this right now. Let me go ahead and save the code, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. So when we run it, let's make this a little bit bigger. So first of all, it tells me last row is 15, so it's going to run 15 times. So if we go look over here, yep, 15 is the last row. So the last row is 15. So just like we had up here in our console, the value of I on this first go around is 0, which is grabbing the name Dwight Schrute and the employee ID 403. Then the next time it runs, it's 1, grabbing Jim Halpert and 644. Then it's 2, grabbing Michael Scott and 454, and et cetera, et cetera. We did get a couple of blanks down here. We'll take care of that up or we'll clean that up here in just a moment. But now we know that this loop is doing exactly what we want it to do. So all we need to do now is we need to make a copy of our time card template and populate it with the information. So the way that we're going to make the copy, and actually before we do that, we are going to create just a couple of values that we're going to need when we do that. So I'm going to say comment here, setting title values for time card 1. And the first thing we're going to do is let period 1 equal period beginning June 6, 2022. And then the next thing I'm going to do is this line here, which is the title. So let time card name equal the employee name dash employee ID dash period 1. Period 1, it says period beginning June 6, 2022. So we're going to set the title value for time card 1. Now we are going to create time card 1 from template. You are probably used to just working very specifically with the spreadsheet app functions. And here we're going to use something a little different. First of all, I'm just going to have console log, and I'm going to have it say making first time card for employee name, just so I know exactly what's going on. And then we're going to do something kind of interesting here. And let me, just for the sake of time, I'm going to copy this code in, but I'll walk you through it. So what we're going to do is we're going to define where we want these cards to be stored. So I'm creating a variable called let destination folder equal drive app, because now we're working with Google Drive inside this app, not just with the spreadsheet. So let drive app dot get folder by ID, and then the ID of the folder that we want. And if we look at our time cards folder, it is this ID up here in the URL that starts with 1MRD. We copy this and we go back and we just make sure that this is the ID that we're giving to this function of get folder by ID. The next line is let new time card equal drive app get file by ID this time. And this file ID corresponds with our time card template. So if you look up here, once again, go in the URL, it is this kind of random number of characters right here in the URL. That is the ID of this particular file. So I'm saying drive app get file by ID, and I give it the ID, dot make copy. And when you make a copy, it takes a minimum of 2 arguments, and that is what the name of that document should be. So I've already defined the variable of time card name, which is the employee name hyphen employee ID hyphen period 1. And where do you want it stored? And right here in destination folder, I've already designated what folder I want this to be stored in. And then the last thing it does is it gets the ID of this newly created document. So this one line does quite a bit. And let's just walk through it one last time. So first of all, it creates the variable new time card. It goes into the drive app. It grabs my template. It then makes a copy of it. It then names that copy. It stores it in the folder that I want to store it in, and then it passes back the ID of that newly created spreadsheet and stores that in my variable of new time card. And I also have a console log out giving me the ID of that new time card as well. All right, so now we've created a new time card from the template. We've named it the way that we want to name it. We've stored it where we want to store it. Let's start populating it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to grab that time card. And we're going to do that saying let spreadsheet equal spreadsheet dot open by ID. So normally we would say, spreadsheet at get active spreadsheet. Well, this is not going to be the active spreadsheet. We're going to have to open it by the ID. And fortunately, up here in this line that we just wrote, the ID of the newly created time card is being passed back to this variable. So all we have to do is put in new time card. Then we need to make sure that we're working with the right tab in that time card. So I'm going to say let time card equal SS get sheet by name. And this one really is just going to be sheet 1. Just like that. So now anytime we want to grab that time card, all we have to do is use the variable time card. The next step in this process is we are going to put in the employee header information. And this is sort of the meat of our loop right here. So I'm going to drop this in. And this is basically what takes the values that I'm pulling from the time card builder spreadsheet and putting them into the actual new time card. So I am saying time card, which is defined up here as sheet 1 of the newly created time card. So timecard.getRange A3. And if we go look, if you ever need to reference where something needs to go, because it's making a copy of the template, we just go look back at our template. So A3 is going to be this cell right here with employee ID. One thing to notice, this is all one cell. It already has employee ID in there. So when we populate it, we need to make sure we put employee ID back. So I'm saying timecard.getRange, grab cell A3, and then set the value to employee ID plus the variable employee ID for that line. In this next line, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing it with the employee's name, but I'm using a different convention for designating which cell it's going to be going into. So I'm saying timecard.getRange, and this time I'm giving it a row coordinate and a column coordinate. So I'm saying row 4, column 1. And if we go look at the template, we go down to row 4, which is this, column 1, which is this. So that designates this cell. This is where the name of the employee goes. So we go back here and I'm saying, so get range for row 4, column 1, and then set the value to name colon plus whatever is stored in the employee name variable. I did it two ways just to show you that you could actually use either method. It doesn't matter. A lot of people like to use what's called the A1 notation, which is this right here. I kind of switch back and forth depending on what I think might be easier. It's a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to iterate when you're using this A1 notation. It's way easier to iterate through a loop when you're using this integer notation. In this case, we're not iterating through these particular lines. We're just designating, but I did want to show as an example that you can use either one. The rest of these lines would set for department location, for the supervisor. I am putting week of June 6th to June 12th, and that the check date is going to be on June 24th. And then because there are two tables in here, I need to do it twice. So basically this second block down here does the exact same thing as the first block, but it just does it for that second table. So the next thing we need to do is we just need to drop in the dates. And so I am going to go ahead and grab a block of code that I've already written. I'm going to go in here and let's move my comment back over a little bit. And once again, I am just going through here, timecard.getRange, row 9, column 2. So if we look at our template, it is row 9, column 2. So it's this cell right here. And I'm saying that needs to have June 6, 2022. Because I'm not necessarily working like with a date that's going to have to be manipulated or iterated or changed or anything like that, I did it a really simple, easy way. And I just basically typed in the dates here. There are other ways that you could do it. Once again, you can actually create a date object and just iterate on it. I thought that might be a little too complicated and kind of overkill for this. So I just went ahead and just typed out the lines really quickly. And then you can kind of head and change these. However, if I had to do this again and again and again, which maybe I will have to, there probably is a better way that you can just give it a start date. And just as you loop through, it would also increase the date by 1 for every time that you have to actually go through this loop. But in this case, I just went ahead and just typed it out, and it's just hard coded into the code. That makes our first timesheet. Now we have to do that for timesheet 2. So what we're going to be doing is we are literally just going to take some of the information from the top, and we're going to paste it back in. So we are going to create time card 2 from template. Let me give me a little bit more room down here so I can focus in on this a little bit better. So in this case, we're going to do console log. I'm just saying making second time card for whoever the employee name is. I'm going to say let new time card 2 equals drive app.get file by ID. This is the same ID that we used in that first code block. Make copy and time card 2 name is going to be the name of the document, and destination folder is going to be where it's going to be stored, and then it has to pass back the ID. Now here's one thing. We already have the value for destination folder, but we don't have a value for time card underscore name 2. So let's create that really quickly. And I already have that written out or typed out. So I'm going to go up here, just one line above, and I'm going to say let time card name 2 equal employee name plus hyphen plus employee ID plus hyphen plus period 2. And I'm also probably going to need to define period 2. So let's put that up here. So period 2 is simply going to be a string that says period beginning June 20th, 2022. So we're setting our 2 variables. We're putting out the console log, just announcing that we're making the second time card. We are grabbing the template again, making a copy, naming it this value up here, or these values up here, putting it in our destination folder and grabbing the ID. And then all I'm doing here is I just want that ID to show up in my console as this is running. So now we just need to kind of do everything that we did previously. And I'm going to do this very quickly. So I'm going to copy a whole bunch of text, and I'm going to copy it into my code editor right here. Make sure I'm doing this correctly. All right, so we just did this part. So we did console log, get the file, make a copy, put it in our folder, get the ID. So console gives us the ID. Now we need to actually get that time card. Remember, once again, so we're going to say let SS2 or spreadsheet 2, spreadsheet open by ID, and the ID is the new time card over here. And I apologize if I didn't explain this the first time. When you use open by ID, to be very clear, it doesn't open it in the tab. It actually opens it in the background on the server and allows you to work with it, but it's not actually going to open up in your browser. So if you have to do this through a line of 100 employees, you're not going to have 100 tabs, or in this case, 200 tabs open. Nothing's going to open. It is going to simply make that new sheet available to you in the background so your code can run against it. And then when you open it, the changes should be there. So we're going to do open by ID, new time card 2, just like we did in that first block. And we're going to say let time card 2 equal spreadsheet 2, get sheet by name, sheet 1. So now anytime we want to work with sheet 1 of that new spreadsheet we just created, all we have to do is reference time card 2, which you can see we've done several times here. And we basically went through all the same things that we did in the first block, added the employee ID, the name, the week of, in this case, it's going to be June 20th to July 3rd. The check date is going to be July 8th. And we did that for both blocks, and then we added in all of the new dates using the different ways that you can designate the cells. So let me clean this up a little bit just so we don't have all of this blank space. although it doesn't hurt anything to have it there. And I think we're ready to actually give this a test. So let me go ahead and save my code. So when this works, it should start here, give me this, go build that time card, drop this information in, as well as the other information that I've hard-coded into it. And yeah, so let's go ahead and click on run, and we're going to look down here at our log. So last row is 15, Dwight Schrute, employee number 403, making first time card for Dwight, gives me the time card ID, making second time card for Dwight, gives me the ID. Then it goes down to Jim, making first time card for Jim, making second time card for Jim, then it goes to Michael Scott. And this is just going to run. It takes probably, I don't know, a minute or so to run. So let's go ahead and fast forward to after it's already finished running. Okay, the script is finished running. I'm back in my time cards folder. And as you can see, we have a lot of files in here now. So let's just go ahead and start at the beginning. So we have Andy Bernard, employee number 591, period beginning June 6, 2022. And if we click on this, it has his employee number here, his name here, the week beginning here, when the check date's going to be, and the dates that we designated for both tables. And so let's go look at the next one. So this is pay period beginning June 20th. So that's what it says here, gives the check date here, and gives the new dates here. And it basically did that for all of the employees. So we can go just also click on Creed Bratton. And yep, Creed's name is here, employee number is here, all the right dates, all the right information. So this is how a great example of how you could use a Google Sheet to store information in that you needed for a repetitive task, and then use the code in the background using AppScript to basically automate the creation of, hundreds, if not thousands of documents to basically satisfy a task that would otherwise be very, very difficult to do manually. As always, I hope this was helpful. And if it was, I always appreciate a like on my videos. And if you think this type of information is useful, please subscribe, because this is what I do on my channel. And also, as always, I will put the code that I used in the description below. So once again, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. Any comments, questions, please put down below. I'm very good, or at least I try to be, with answering and helping with any problems you might have. And other than that, thank you for your time. I hope we have a great day.